The voicemail was 12 seconds long. I've played it 247 times in the past 3 days. I know that number because I started counting after the first hour of sitting in my parked car, staring at the dashboard clock, watching the minutes bleed into each other like watercolors in rain. My name is Elena Marie Vasquez. I'm 28 years old, and until 4 days ago, I was the happiest I'd ever been. I had just signed the final paperwork on a 4-bedroom colonial in the historic district of Savannah, Georgia. The kind of house with wrap-around porches and magnolia trees that drop petals like snowfall in spring. The kind of house I'd promised myself I'd buy when I was 12 years old, sitting in the back of my mother's station wagon, watching her cry over bills she couldn't pay. That house was supposed to be my victory. My proof that the cycle had broken. That I had climbed out of the pit of generational poverty with nothing but my own 2 hands and a work ethic that borders on obsessive. And then my mother called. The voicemail came through at 9:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. I remember the exact time because I was standing in the empty living room of my new house, running my fingers along the crown molding, imagining the echo of laughter filling those walls someday. My phone buzzed against the hardwood floor where I'd dropped it earlier. I picked it up, saw her name on the screen, and felt that familiar knot tighten in my chest. The knot I've carried since I was 8 years old, watching her choose a bottle of whiskey over my school play. I didn't answer. I never do. Not anymore. The last time I answered her call, she spent 47 minutes telling me what a disappointment I was for moving 2 states away for college. For getting a degree. For building a life that didn't include her chaos. So I let it go to voicemail. And that's when my world collapsed. Her voice was slurred, the way it always gets after her 3rd drink of the evening. But there was something different this time. Something cold and calculated beneath the alcohol. A precision that made my blood run cold the moment I heard it. Elena, it's your mother. I know you think you're so smart. I know you think you've made it. But I want you to listen to me very carefully. There was a pause. I could hear ice clinking in a glass. That money you think is yours? It's not. I made some calls. I know everything. And I'll tell you what, sweetheart, don't come back. Don't you dare come back to this city. Because when I'm done with you, there won't be anything left to come back to. The call ended. 12 seconds. That's all it took to unravel 28 years of hard-won progress. I stood there in my empty house, the one I'd worked double shifts and sleepless nights to afford, and I felt something I hadn't felt in 15 years. I felt like that little girl again. The one who hid under her bed while her mother screamed at her father. The one who learned to read by the bathroom light because that was the only place with a lock on the door. The one who promised herself she would escape. And I did escape. I built a career as a financial consultant at one of the top firms in the Southeast. I made partner at 26. I saved every bonus, every commission check, every dollar I could scrape together until I had enough for a down payment on a house that cost more than my mother's annual grocery budget. I created a trust fund in my name when I turned 18, a small inheritance from my grandmother that I grew through smart investments. My grandmother had seen something in me. Something my mother never could. She left me $73,000 when she died, and I turned it into almost $700,000 over 10 years. That trust was my safety net. My proof that I could be smart with money, that I could build something lasting. And now my mother was threatening it. Her words echoed in my mind, I know everything. At first, I told myself she was bluffing. She's always been a master of manipulation. But then I remembered the stack of documents I'd left in my old apartment before moving. Documents my mother had access to, because she'd been helping me organize my files. Documents that included my social security number. My account numbers. Even a copy of the trust agreement. I dropped my phone. It clattered against the floor and for a moment, I just stared at it. This was supposed to be the best moment of my life. This house. This fresh start. And instead, I was standing in the dark, feeling like the ground beneath me had turned to sand. The next morning, I made the first of what would be 3 phone calls that changed everything. I called my banker, Marcus, a man with a calm voice and a steady demeanor who had walked me through the home buying process step by step. I told him I needed to freeze the trust. Immediately. He asked me to repeat myself, and I could hear the confusion in his voice. Elena, he said, you're closing on the house in 2 weeks. This could delay everything. I didn't care. Something in my gut was screaming at me to protect what I'd built. 3 hours later, Marcus called back. He'd frozen the trust. But he also had information I wasn't prepared for. Someone had tried to access the account the night before. Someone who knew the security questions. Someone who claimed to be me. Let that sink in for a moment. My mother had attempted to steal from me. She had called my bank, impersonated me, and tried to wire transfer $200,000 out of the account I had built with my grandmother's legacy. I didn't eat for 2 days after that. I couldn't. Every time I thought about what she had done, my stomach turned inside out. This was the woman who gave birth to me. The woman who held me when I had fevers, who bandaged my scraped knees, who used to sing me to sleep when I was too young to understand how broken she was. And now she was trying to destroy me. The real pain hit when I called her. I know. I should have stayed away. But some part of me, that stupid, hopeful part that still believed in redemption, needed to hear her voice. Needed to give her a chance to explain. She answered on the first ring. Elena. I was wondering when you'd call. Her voice was clear. Sober. That was the first sign that something was deeply wrong. My mother is never sober when she's being vindictive. She uses alcohol to soften the edges of her cruelty. But this time, she was sharp as a blade. I froze the trust, I told her. My voice was steadier than I expected. I know you tried to access it. There was a long silence. And then she laughed. Not a sad laugh. Not a remorseful laugh. A laugh that told me she'd been waiting for this exact moment, for years. Oh, Elena. You have no idea what I've been doing, do you? You think you're so clever. You think you're so much better than me. But let me tell you something, that house you're buying? It's not the only deal I've been working on. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the fact that I've been in contact with the real estate agent. That I told her what a terrible daughter you are. That I made sure she knew exactly how you abandoned me. How you let your own mother rot in a 3-bedroom apartment while you bought a mansion. You think people don't care about loyalty? You're about to find out. And just like that, the second shoe dropped. My mother had called my real estate agent. She had poisoned the well. She had done everything in her power to make sure that the biggest achievement of my life would crumble before my eyes. I ended the call. I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. I just sat there in my empty apartment, surrounded by packing boxes, and I sobbed. I sobbed for the mother I never had. For the girl I used to be. For the millions of moments I'd tried to earn her love and watched it slip through my fingers. But then something shifted. Something I didn't expect. I stopped crying. I wiped my face. I looked at my phone, and I realized, this is my life. This is my money. This is my trust. And no matter what she says or does, she cannot take that away from me. The next morning, I made the second phone call. I called my real estate agent and I said 3 words I never thought I'd say: cancel the deal. The agent, Susan, was stunned. She told me I would lose my earnest money. She told me the seller would keep the deposit. She told me I'd be throwing away $20,000. And you know what I told her? I don't care. Because that house wasn't just a house anymore. It was a symbol. And I wasn't going to let my mother's shadow haunt the doorways of my future. But the third phone call is the one I still haven't made. The one I'm staring at on my screen right now, in this moment, as I sit in this parking lot, watching the sun set over the city I once loved. That phone call is to my lawyer. To undo the irrevocable. To take away my mother's power permanently. The voicemail she left me wasn't just a threat. It was a declaration of war. And now I have to decide, do I fight, or do I disappear? If this story resonates with you, leave a comment telling me where you're watching from. Because I know I'm not the only one who's had to choose between family and freedom. I know there are others out there who've felt the cold grip of betrayal from the very people who were supposed to protect them. And as I sit here, holding my phone, I realize that the answer is not in revenge. It's in survival. It's in building something so strong, so unbreakable, that no one, not even my mother, can tear it down. The trust is frozen. The house deal is cancelled. And tomorrow, I have an appointment with my attorney. What he's about to tell me will change everything. Because my mother's voicemail wasn't just about money. It wasn't just about the house. It was about control. And the truth is, she's been controlling my life from a distance for far too long. But the question is, how far was she willing to go? And what did she mean when she said, "I know everything"? End of part 1. If you're enjoying this story, like and subscribe because it truly helps. The next chapter will reveal the secrets my mother has been hiding for 20 years. The lies. The manipulation. And the one truth that will change the way I see my entire childhood. The law office of Harrison and Associates smelled like old leather and desperation. I'd been there twice before, once to set up the trust, once to draft my will at 25 because I'd become morbidly aware that life doesn't guarantee anyone tomorrow. But this visit was different. This time, I wasn't planning for my future. I was digging up my past. My attorney, David Harrison, is a 62-year-old man with silver hair and eyes that have seen too many family disputes to be surprised by anything. He's the kind of lawyer who doesn't flinch when you tell him your mother tried to impersonate you at a bank. He just nods, takes notes, and asks the questions you're too afraid to ask yourself. "Sit down, Elena," he said, gesturing to the leather chair across from his massive oak desk. "I've been doing some digging since you called yesterday." I sat. My hands were shaking, so I pressed them flat against my thighs. "What did you find?" David leaned back in his chair and folded his hands over his stomach. He looked at me for a long moment, and I could see something shift in his expression. Something that looked almost like pity. "Before I tell you what I found, I need you to prepare yourself. This isn't going to be easy to hear." Nothing about the past 4 days had been easy. I nodded anyway. He opened a folder on his desk, a thick one, stuffed with papers I didn't recognize. "I had my investigator look into your mother's financial history. Not just the recent stuff, everything. Going back 30 years. 30 years. That was longer than I'd been alive. And what I found," he continued, "is that your mother has a history of this. Not just with you. With your grandmother. With your father. With everyone who ever trusted her." I felt my stomach drop. "What do you mean?" David pulled out a document and slid it across the desk toward me. It was a bank statement from 1998, the year I was born. My grandmother's name was at the top. And there, in the transaction history, was a withdrawal for $42,000. The notation read, "Loan to daughter." My mother had borrowed $42,000 from my grandmother. The same grandmother who left me $73,000 when she died. The same grandmother who, according to my mother, had been penniless and left nothing but debt. "She never paid it back," David said quietly. "And that's just the beginning." I stared at the document, my mind racing. My grandmother had spent her final years in a state-run nursing facility. She'd told me she couldn't afford anything better. I'd believed her. I'd visited her there, watched her waste away in a room with yellowing walls and a television that only picked up static. I'd held her hand and promised I'd make something of myself. And all the while, my mother had been hoarding money that should have gone to her care? There's more, David continued. Your grandmother filed a police report in 2001. She accused your mother of stealing from her. The case was dropped because your grandmother refused to press charges. She didn't want to see her daughter go to prison. I felt tears burning behind my eyes. My grandmother had protected my mother. Even when my mother had stolen from her. Even when my mother had left her to rot in a facility that smelled like bleach and broken dreams. And now my mother was trying to do the same thing to me. Why didn't anyone tell me? My voice cracked. Why didn't my grandmother tell me? Because she loved you, David said simply. And she didn't want you to carry that burden. She wanted you to have a chance at a normal life. She wanted you to believe that family could be different. But it wasn't different. It was the same. The same cycle of betrayal, the same lies, the same desperate clawing for control. My mother hadn't just threatened my future, she'd been threatening it my entire life. David pulled another document from the folder. This one was newer. Dated 3 years ago. Your mother has been systematically trying to access your financial accounts since you turned 18. She's opened credit cards in your name. She's taken out loans using your social security number. I found applications for credit cards in your name that you never authorized, going back nearly a decade. A decade. My mother had been stealing my identity for a decade. Every time I'd checked my credit score and seen minor discrepancies, I'd dismissed them as mistakes. Every time I'd gotten a letter about an account I didn't recognize, I'd assumed it was fraud from someone else. Someone random. Someone I'd never meet. But it wasn't random. It was her. How much? I whispered. How much did she take? David hesitated. We're still calculating. But the preliminary numbers suggest somewhere between $80,000 and $100,000. Credit cards. Personal loans. Even a car loan she took out in your name when she bought that SUV she drives. That SUV. The black one she always bragged about. The one she told me she'd saved for. The one she'd driven to my college graduation, parking it right in front of the auditorium like a trophy. She stole from my future, I said. The words came out flat. Emotionless. I wasn't crying anymore. I was past that. I was in a place I'd never been before, a place of cold, hard clarity. David nodded slowly. And I want you to understand the legal implications of this. Identity theft is a felony. Financial fraud is a felony. Your mother is facing serious prison time if you decide to press charges. And there it was. The choice I'd known was coming. The choice I didn't want to make. I could let her walk away. I could continue the pattern my grandmother had started, protecting her daughter from consequences, absorbing the pain, moving forward with my life while pretending the past didn't exist. That would be the easy choice. The quiet choice. The choice that kept the peace. Or I could finally break the cycle. But here's the thing about breaking cycles, it's brutal. It's ugly. It means becoming the villain in someone else's story. It means accepting that the person who gave you life will never love you the way you deserve. It means choosing yourself over a fantasy that was never real. I need time, I told David. I need to think about this. He nodded. Take as much time as you need. But Elena, he paused, and his eyes met mine with an intensity that made me hold my breath. Your mother isn't just stealing money. She's stealing your ability to trust. She's stealing your peace. And she's going to keep doing it until someone stops her. I walked out of that office feeling like I'd been gutted. The afternoon sun was blinding, and I squinted against it, feeling disoriented and raw. I got into my car and just sat there, staring at the steering wheel, trying to process everything I'd learned. My grandmother had tried to protect me. She'd hidden the truth to spare me the pain. But in doing so, she'd left me vulnerable. She'd left me unprepared for the woman my mother had become. And now I was left holding the pieces, trying to decide which ones to keep and which ones to throw away. That's when I remembered the voicemail. The words my mother had spoken with such cold precision. I know everything. What did she know? Was she threatening to expose some secret? Or was she admitting to her crimes, daring me to do something about it? I played the voicemail again. For the 248th time. And this time, I listened differently. I listened not as a daughter desperate for her mother's love, but as a woman who had just discovered she'd been manipulated her entire life. The ice clinking in the glass. The slight slurring. The calculated pauses. My mother was drunk when she called me. But she was also victorious. She was gloating. She was telling me she'd won before I even knew there was a game. And that's when it hit me. That's when the pieces started to click together. My mother hadn't just called the real estate agent. She hadn't just tried to access my trust fund. She was working with someone. Someone inside the bank. Someone who had access to my accounts and was feeding her information. I called David back immediately. I told him what I suspected, and I could hear the surprise in his voice. He'd been looking at the financial crimes, but he hadn't considered the possibility of an accomplice. "I'll look into it," he said. "But Elena, if there's someone else involved, this becomes a much bigger case. It becomes conspiracy. It becomes federal." Federal. The word hung in the air like a guillotine. "Do it," I said. My voice was steady. Calm. I was making the choice. I want to know who helped her. And I want to press charges. All of them. There was a pause on David's end. Then I heard him exhale slowly. "Are you sure about this? Once we start this process, there's no going back. Your mother will be arrested. She'll go to trial. This will become public record." I thought about my grandmother. About how she'd spent her final years protecting a daughter who didn't deserve her loyalty. About how she died without ever seeing justice. About how I'd been robbed of the truth for nearly 3 decades. And I thought about the house. The beautiful colonial in Savannah with the wraparound porch and the magnolia trees. The house I'd worked so hard to buy. The house I'd canceled because I was afraid. I wasn't afraid anymore. "I'm sure," I told him. "I've been running from this my whole life. I'm done running."